is Up for Grabs, a podcast where three unfiltered friends talk about anything and everything. And now, here are your hosts, Tracy, Kim, and Rachel.
Welcome to Up for Grabs. I'm here with my friends Tracy.
Hello.
And Kim.
Hello.
Hi. I was going to call you Keith Morrison and John Quinones.
Oh my because Quinones. Yes.
Who are you? I want to be Keith.
That's fine. I don't care. I'll be John.
Well, I was going to say that because today on Up for Grabs, we're going to go back into our true crime. And I know that Tracy and Kim, they are really kind of the local versions of those famous
of
gentlemen.
The Dateline famous people.
Yes.
Okay.
If
we do
the
love
south
our
side
true
of
crime.
Indianapolis had two experts, it would be you. But we're going to keep it local and talk about what they were always called here were the Burger Chef murders. It happened on Friday, November 17th of 1978 in Speedway, and it has gone unsolved for all of these years. The bodies were found, but they had some suspects, but so far unsolved. There's a new documentary that's coming out about these murders. It's called The Speedway Murders, and it's going to stream on YouTube on June 21st of this year. So I thought we would go ahead and do our dive into it before this documentary came out, and then maybe if you're interested and want to know more about it, you can tune into that.
And what I saw listed it as Apple TV and Prime Video on Demand. So I'm not sure where. So just put in your search The Speedway Murders.
And select theaters as well.
Really?
So
Okay.
they'll probably I imagine they'll be in our theaters. But is it when is it? It's the end of June.
June 21st. It's
June
a Friday.
21st. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I looked at a couple different things because I couldn't figure out exactly how you could watch it, and I did see YouTube, but I saw Prime, Apple, and movie in select theaters.
Okay. And since this horribleness occurred in Tracy's backyard, Tracy, you were 8 years old in 1978.
Yes.
I trust that you have been
9, but
nine.
yeah.
I trust that you've been to Burger Chef before.
Actually, yeah. So my Burger Chef connection, and then we'll go on to the next part. I was a cheerleader, not to brag, for my grade school, and there was a dad, Mr. Naaman, I'll give him a shout out, of one of the boys on our team, and he took the entire team and the cheerleaders back when no one took the cheerleaders. After every game, he took us to Burger Chef.
Oh my gosh.
And got us a fun meal, which I looked it up. They were 69 cents at the time. We thought he was money bags. So the fact that he was buying like 10 or 12 people a 69-cent meal probably wasn't that big of a deal to him. But to me, it seemed
Okay,
huge.
Daddy Warbucks. Yeah.
I know. That's how it felt. And the best part was they had a Fixins bar. Nobody cares. But I would eat a cheeseburger with about 37 pickles on it because no one could stop me from putting on as many pickles as I wanted at the Fixins bar.
You put them out of business.
Yeah. So I got my money's worth of that sandwich. So that is my Burger Chef story. So yes, I do remember going there, and that was a few years after this. They were bought out by Hardee's.
Yes, and we all know that my illustrious semester at Hardee's, so we won't go into that. So it's November of 1978. Tracy, you want to start us off?
Yes, but I'm going to go back a few months.
Okay.
To Hold on. I took notes, but my organization is a little off.
That's all right. Well, in 1978, Indiana was getting hit hard with lots of things.
They were. So the Speedway bombings is what I knew them as. Kim, you read what?
Well, when I was reading an article about it, they called them the soda can bombings. So I'm guessing, did they put like soda cans in mailboxes?
Yeah. So
is that what they did?
Well,
okay.
Trash cans. It was 8 random bombings in and around Speedway. And they call them IEDs, which are like incinerary explosive devices or something. I don't know what the I stands for. I just made that up. But they were blowing up things, and the most violent or the most effective one was in a gym bag in the Speedway High School parking lot. And it was after a freshman football game. And a Vietnam veteran by the name of Carl DeLong, his right leg was blown off. Part of his other leg was damaged and one of his arms.
Oh my God.
Again, this is my connection as I'm going to say that I grew up next door, like right next door to a grocery store. And this was before people really got on you for littering. So there were always bags in the parking lot. And we would kick them because, like, you just kick things that are in your way. I don't know. But back in that time, we used to always kick the bags in the parking lot.
Remember, like trash bags?
Like a paper sack.
Okay.
Or
I thought you meant like a gym bag. I didn't know what kind of bag.
No.
Okay.
This was a gym bag, but he kicked it, or that was the lure, and that's what happened.
Oh my gosh.
Was when his leg got blown off. So I was very fearful from then on, and I didn't kick another bag.
Yeah.
But like I totally remember still the feeling of if I see a bag, I think don't touch that.
Yeah.
Not picking it up. Somebody else can do it. I'm not touching it.
Now, when I don't remember everything about, I remember them calling them the Speedway bombings. Did anyone else get hurt or die?
I think there were some injuries, no deaths.
Okay.
I did look at that.
There was a police officer, I think, that was injured by one, but no deaths. Right.
They did apprehend the suspect, and I think it was it a political thing, like politically driven?
No. So let me see if I've got that right. They thought it had something to do with distracting from a murder that happened in Speedway prior to that.
Yes.
By a man, Brett Kimberlin. And he killed a woman named, or they think he did, Julia Shepfer. I'm probably not saying that right. She disapproved of him dating her daughter and also thought that he had seemed inappropriate with her granddaughter.
Okay.
So an eyewitness, being this dead woman's husband, identified him as the shooter out in front of their house. He saw his wife be shot and killed.
And it was like the, excuse me, it was like the first murder, like murders didn't happen very often in Speedway. And I remember that being a huge deal that there was even a murder in that area.
Yeah. Because it is a little town. It's, hometown USA.
Yeah.
So what else was going on in Indianapolis at the time?
Well, in January, the historic blizzard of 78 took place.
I recall.
And I was 5 at the time. We lived in Kokomo, and we lived by a grocery store as well at that time. And I remember walking to the grocery store and the big drifts of snow and, our swing set being like, piled up, past the slide.
Yes.
Yeah, that was, so that happened in January. So that was the beginning of 78.
Right.
So
I remember.
yeah. And then one more thing that happened. Well, okay. So then you had the murder of the lady. And then in September, we had the bombings. And then the day after the Burger Chef murders was when Jim Jones had his mass suicide with his cult. And Jim Jones is from Indiana. What part? Is he from Indianapolis?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
remember.
So
and
it
it
was
was
just-
that was known as the Guyana tragedy, if you remember,
Okay.
if that's
Yeah.
what they called it, because
Yeah, I've
that's
seen a lot
where
of documentaries
that's
about
where they
it.
were when all the people literally drank the Kool-Aid. That saying, for people who don't know,
That's where that came from.
That's where it came from. When people say, oh, I guess you're drinking the Kool-Aid. That was these people that were brainwashed into drinking this Kool-Aid that had poison in it and killed themselves. I don't even remember. I want to say it was like 30, 50. I mean, I think it was a lot of people.
Oh, it was a lot of people. And from what I remember, the documentary that I watched a long time ago is that the media was kind of closing in on them. And media had been there kind of spying on them and trying to figure out what was going on. And I think that, as most cults, when they combust,
Yes.
Something like that happens where he told them to, cyanide was in the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, there was a lot going on in
A lot
1978.
going on
So
in
Tracy, let's get us up to Friday, November 17th of
Okay.
78.
We'll go there. So this Burger Chef was on Crawfordsville Road. And you said in my backyard. It was less than 4 miles from my home.
Wow.
So I could, in theory, walk there if I was feeling really adventuresome, but I never would have been allowed. But I also had siblings that were the same age as those people that were murdered. So I also remember, I have memory issues, but there are some things that stick with me.
Yeah.
And I don't, at the time, in hindsight, maybe that's why my parents never pushed us to work fast food because it seemed like so many of my friends or people I know did.
Right.
It was never even a thought for us to work fast food. So I now I wonder if that played into it. Okay, so there were 4 employees working that night. A manager named Jane Fried, Friedt. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And then there was Mark Flemons, Ruth Shelton, and Daniel Davis. So Mark and Daniel were both 16. Ruth was 18, and then Jane was 20.
That's one thing that stuck out to me. She was in charge.
I
She
know.
was the manager on duty, and she was 20 years old.
20 years old.
Yeah.
So they were closing
young.
the store that
So they were
evening.
closing the store. It happened sometime between, they estimate between 11 and 12. So, okay, I'm trying to figure out the best way to tell what happened. It wasn't initially a crime scene as far as a murder. An employee who had just gone on a date had driven by and saw that there were still lights on. So he was going to go say hey to his friends. He had dropped off. The date was with someone else who worked there, I think, but she had been dropped off at her home because it was curfew. And he said, I'm just going to swing back by. And he saw the back door was propped open. He went in and something was off. There were some empty money bags. There was still money in the cash register, change. I think I heard like $100 in change, which is no small amount if you're going to rob a place. And they did take, they believe they took $581,
Yep.
which in today's money would be a little under $3,000.
Not a lot.
If you're wondering. Not a lot. So let me think of the next part of that, what I was saying. Oh, so he goes in there and there's the money bags. Something's off, so he calls the police. You know, he's like, this isn't right. He calls the police. They come and they say, oh, these kids took the money and took off. When the money and the drugs run out, they'll be back.
Yep.
So they thought it was the employees.
They thought it was the employees. The 4 employees all got together and took off with this is what they went with. And they did no investigation that night.
Sounds very Barney Fife.
It does sound very off, and I
Very
don't even know what else to say about that. Because the girls' purses were still there. Their coats were still there. It doesn't make sense, you know.
I mean, I wonder if it's because there wasn't any obvious signs of, blood or broken glass, or I think it's extremely odd that you have 4 employees that are closing a store and they're not there.
Yeah.
One thing-
that doesn't make any sense.
no.
One thing I did see online, and I'm not positive if it's accurate, but I think one of the police officers that was first to show up thought that maybe the 4 of them had gone, there was an under 21 club somewhere close by, like within walking distance. It didn't say the name of it, but I'm for sure I thought Tracy Brown would know.
Well, I did go to one in Speedway back in the day, but
Okay.
can't think of the name of it right,
so
now.
they thought, oh, these kids stole this money and they're just out. They'll show up. It's fine.
Yes. Except for the next day, the manager, Jane, her Chevy, what was it?
Was it a Vega?
Yes. Her Chevy Vega was found over on 16th Street. And then all of a sudden it was, okay, there's a little more to this when they found the car.
And unfortunately, the morning crew had come in and got the store ready to open.
Yeah. So the police didn't even
So they
tape
cleaned
anything off.
everything.
Yeah. The morning crew shows up. Nothing had been dusted for fingerprints, but because the night crew
Nope.
didn't clean, they had to really bleach it and get it all ready to go.
Great.
Spick and span for the customers. And customers came in. So it was a
was-
very tainted crime scene.
By
At
the
that
time-
point,
yeah.
there had been a whole lot of people in there. It had been cleaned thoroughly. So yeah, that's
That's bad.
another problem with that. So, you want me to keep going or
Yeah.
okay? Let me think if I missed anything there.
So her car being found pretty much was probably the first clue that, okay, something happened.
Yeah.
Like wasn't just kids being kids and, stealing some money and buying some drugs. These kids are missing.
Yes. And I will say that one of the Speedway officers shortly after said, we screwed it up from the beginning.
Yeah, I read that
Like
quote a
there
lot.
was some ownership of what went wrong, and it was a whole lot.
And maybe it was also because, like we were saying, it was unusual for
Yeah.
a small community like that to even think that a group of kids would be killed. So
Yeah.
why would they,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's their job to think the worst, but they.
No, I mean, I as cops, I think I would be a little more like, this is fishy, but I can understand where maybe there wasn't urgency.
Right.
And
at
it
the
was
very
also
beginning.
at a place and time where this would not be your first thought.
No.
Now it's my first thought on everything.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
and
I'm like, what kind of horribleness is happening there?
And you can't, there wasn't cell phones. There wasn't anything for them to kind of track anyone down either.
No.
So,
Which part of what I thought of when I was thinking about this and how affected I was both by the Speedway bombings and the Burger Chef murders as a kid was because we didn't have the onslaught of news that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's in our face 24/7. But back then, if you weren't up in the morning or you didn't watch it at dinner time or you weren't up at bedtime to see it, you had no clue what was going on in the world. And as a kid, I wouldn't have known. But these were cases that people talked about because it was local and it was scary and it was unusual. So I remember them and remember the fear that a lot of people had about these things because there weren't instant people arrested.
Right.
So I think that's why they stuck with me as much as they have through the years. Anywhoosie, so Sunday afternoon, some hikers, and I believe it was the property owner and his wife, but on some things it says hikers. Johnson County.
Did you see what the intersection was?
so picture it.
Okay, I
Center
couldn't-
Grove High School.
I couldn't picture it. Is that where it was?
Yes.
Is it 37 in Stones Crossing? So it would be.
I had read that it was, and it was a field
guess
at
that's
that
close.
time, but
I
it
was
was, I mean, the article that I read said near Center Grove High
I was
School.
going to say, I mean, 37 and Center Grove are very close
yeah.
to one another.
Yeah. So crazy.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to see an intersection and I didn't see it, but I was like, well, Johnson County's not that huge.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I've driven by there. We've all lived right down in that area, which I'm going to come back to. But so the hikers came upon these bodies.
2 days later.
Yes. And they immediately called for the police to come. They come. Again, the area was not cordoned off like it should have been. More people traipsed through than they should have. Evidence disappeared and then reappeared, like IDs that belonged to the kids. Just random things that who was in charge? And the answer is, I don't know. But
So 2 of the bodies, and I don't know specifically on which of the kids, but 2 of the bodies were near each other. And then the other 2 bodies were in different spots, but I think that they assumed that they were running, trying to get
Yeah.
away because they were shot and they were beaten.
yes. So Ruth and Daniel, 18 and 16, were the 2 that were shot with a .38 caliber. And they call it execution style. So
In the back of the head.
the back of the head, I believe, because they were found face down
But
and
you know
had
what?
multiple gunshot
They got
wounds.
the better of it because the other girl was stabbed, and they said that
strangled. One of them was strangled.
was it?
They said I had read that there was asphyxiation marks on.
So, yeah, I didn't see that part, but she was the one that was stabbed 3 times and the knife broke off in
yeah.
her chest. And the handle was not found. So there is evidence out there somewhere that
Right.
someone, if you find a knife handle in your granddaddy's shed,
right.
you might have it tested. I'm just saying we might be able to solve it that way. But then they found the other part of the knife when they did the autopsy. It was still lodged in her chest.
And I read, I mean, I know that you said like blunt force, but I online, and maybe this documentary that comes out will be more definitive, but it made it seem like one of the boys was like beaten with like a chain or something. It made it seem like there was some heavy chain, and maybe he was also
Maybe
strangled
that's what
with
it was, because I know one of them was beaten bad.
And it depends on which report you're
I know,
reading.
I know.
Because it did say, and he was the only African American
Yep.
there. He was, one report says, like that I read, said bludgeoned to death with a chain. And then his death was actually caused by choking on blood.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking about, the choking. Maybe that's probably where
And then another one says it's possible, because it was a very wooded area, that when the 2 were shot, he was able to run And when he did, it was a very dark middle of nowhere. He could have run full force into a tree. And
Absolutely.
that is how he knocked himself out and then choked on his blood. So that is another possible way that he died.
I was
both
just
horrible.
Yeah, I was taken aback with all the several different ways, the creative ways of killing these kids. I'm like, if you think about it, that's a lot of different work to be doing. And how many, you would think there has to be at least 4 people or more to be able to pull that off with all these
Right. Couldn't have been one person. I mean, no way.
Yeah.
No, but it was horrific. I was like, gosh.
And as we were talking and saying, oh, I heard this and I heard that, I did read in the article that I was reading that I think 5 different districts came together to work on this case. So when you do read an article, and a lot of those police officers are either retired or they're dead, a lot of the articles that you read are from different points of view.
Right.
You know.
And they said like FBI was called in 11 hours after the abduction. So it was like the next day, early in the morning. But you also have to remember FBI in Indiana in 1978 was probably 1 or 2 guys.
Yeah.
Tops. Maybe just 1.
Yeah.
In Indiana. So it wasn't like there would be a full force of people that came in on a Learjet to solve the crime.
Yeah, it was a lot of speculation and a lot of just guesswork on what happened. So
Okay,
Yes.
so after the bodies were found.
Okay, so hold on though. I want to say that when they were found, the money and watches were still on the victims.
Oh.
They were all still in their Burger Chef uniforms. So robbery does not seem to be the motive.
yeah, I don't think.
Or it doesn't make sense to be the motive. Like the girls' purses were still there. They had a little bit of cash in it. There was $100 left in the register. They had money and jewelry and watches on them. Like that doesn't make sense. The car wasn't taken. It was abandoned.
Right.
So those are all valuable things that if it were money, why not take it all? It seems like thieves are usually pretty selfish that way. So I don't know. So the leading theory, one of the leading theories is that the four victims were kidnapped during a botched robbery, possibly after one recognized one of the killers. So they're saying it's possible that, like the young man who ran into the tree, he was not scheduled to be working that night. He was covering for someone. So
He was covering for the guy that was on the date.
on the date. So they're thinking maybe, he recognized one of them. They came on a night that he wasn't going to be working to rob the place. I don't know.
Like they didn't want to, they were thinking that they weren't going to have to hurt anyone. But then when they saw the kid knew who they were, then they realized they had to kill all of them.
Yes.
And one of the other theories along kind of mixed in that was that the guy that was on the date may have been dealing drugs. And it may have been that those people came in for him to get what they were owed. And then, someone recognized someone and it just all hell broke loose.
And a lot of people theories try to tie the young kids into drugs. I don't know if they did or
Yeah,
not.
I mean,
the fact that I don't see conclusive proof,
Right.
I'm
All
hesitant to
speculation.
say it because it makes me sad if it's not
I know,
true to
and yeah,
speak
absolutely.
of them. But like they said, like the 20-year-old manager, supposedly Burger King was known as a
chef.
sorry,
It's
King.
easy. It's easy.
Sorry, King.
Sorry, King.
I meant the chef of Burger. Supposedly, Burger Chef was a drug. People sold drugs in the bathroom regularly. Now, someone had said, if that's true, would this young manager not know that?
Right.
Was she getting kickback? I don't know. It all seems kind of crazy to me. These were also kids that were in the choir. That none of them had a record.
They're just kids.
Yes. But then how many people were involved? How many people would have to be involved to get 4
I know.
teenagers to leave with them?
And that's where I lean towards more drugs. And I'm just speculation because I feel like, and I don't want to say gangs, but like you have different groups of people. And I don't know, that's just, the more I read, the more it just made me wonder.
What other suspects did? I feel like they might have said at the time in Indy, maybe, I don't know if it's just on the west side, but maybe at that time in Indy, there was a group of people that were going around robbing.
Yes. In the burger
fast food
chefs.
restaurants.
Yes.
I mean,
fast food robberies or whatever they called them. There was a man who was brought in for questioning because he was bragging in a bar about having been part of this.
Okay.
And they brought him in and they gave him a polygraph and he passed the polygraph. I never saw a name for him.
I didn't either. And
I don't think they are naming him. And I guess back then, if you passed a polygraph, that was as good as gold, that you weren't guilty. Now we know that there are ways to beat it.
Right.
And maybe he knew how back then. I don't know. But anyway, he was let go. But he said that there were these robbers and he dropped names of a few people. But again, there's no physical evidence. So how are you going to bring these people in? But with the exception of, and let me make sure I say this right. Let me go back. There were 2 eyewitnesses the night of the event prior to it. Someone had called and said that there were some sketchy looking guys there. And it was
hanging around in the parking lot.
And it was a 16-year-old boy. And I think he had a 16-year-old girl and they might have been making out in the car or something is what's insinuated. But they called and said there were some weird men around here. They looked to be white in their 30s. And they said one had a beard, the other was fair-haired and clean. And then these 2 men that were brought in. Okay, wait, the busts, because you brought this up earlier with me before we got on here. Normally, the 16-year-old was able to give a description, he and his girlfriend. They took the descriptions and they had some local artists make clay busts of these people.
Yes.
You can look at them online if you look it up, and maybe we'll put a picture on our page.
It's pretty specific.
They're very specific. They're very frightening looking to me. You liken them to the Lionel Richie.
I did. It looked like the Hello video. It did.
They sure did. But yeah, so those were weird looking. But these 2 men that were brought in, okay, so the guy who had been bragging in the bar.
Yes.
He gives the name of these 2 guys from Johnson County. And one of them, clean cut, white or fair hair. The other, dark hair, had a beard for the past 5 years, but had just shaved it. Little sus. I mean, people normally with beards don't shave unless there's a reason, like they're hiding from a murder charge. I don't think that's the reason everybody shaves their beard, but it might be. So that part was weird.
So did that ever go anywhere with the 2 suspects? I mean, I know that I'd read that they brought them in and they questioned them. Those weren't the 2 that took. I mean, what did they do with those 2? I mean, obviously, they just
no questioned them,
yeah,
but there was no evidence. There was nothing to link them. And one of the investigators who's still alive was talking about it, and he said, "I'm not going to name names, but there are 2 men in Johnson County that I believe could be responsible for this."
Okay, well, here's my question. You said that when the bodies were found, and I know it was a little compromised at both scenes, but when the kids' bodies were found, is that evidence still somewhere? I mean, with what we've done with DNA stuff since 1978, I just feel like if they had any evidence, couldn't they?
Unless it comes out in this documentary of things that we don't know about, I never read anything about anything collected that could still be used today with DNA. But that may be something that they don't. I don't know. There is I should have written down his name. One of the lead investigators that's since retired and still alive. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to play a big part in this documentary. Mm-hmm. He was the one that was talking about it. But in talking about that, he really thought that those 2 men, but can I add on the guy that was in jail? So, there was a jailhouse snitch that basically said somebody in jail, his name was Donald Forrester, and he was in jail for like rape. He was in jail for like 92 years. So he was going to be in the rest of his life.
Right.
He confessed, and they went as far as talking to him, getting the story. Donald Forrester knew a lot of things.
Okay.
He admitted that he did it. kind of chime in. Did he say it was for drug money? I mean, what was his reasoning?
I don't know if he said there was a reason. I just know that he knew a lot of details that it would only make sense that he was involved.
So they wait and wait and wait. They're getting prosecutors involved. They're about Steve Goldsmith was our at the time. So it got leaked to the press, and the confession got out there, and Donald recanted, and at that time said, "I'm not talking anymore." And Steve Goldsmith said, "We don't have enough. We don't have enough," and they just let it. They never prosecuted him.
And he was already in jail.
He was already in jail. So I think the cop, the lead investigator, the cop I think they were heartbroken. I mean, they felt like this is our guy.
Right.
So, and he ended up dying in 2006. So Donald Forrester, the one that admitted and then recanted.
Yes.
So,
and he was able to point out the spots in the field.
He was.
They took him to the field, and he pointed the exact spots that each of the victims was found in.
But he didn't name names, like who helped him.
No, and that's the thing.
No.
So he couldn't have done it on his own. I don't believe it. I don't believe he could have done it on his own.
That was part of the reason that and they believe he recanted when his confession was released to the press, because he was afraid for his life in jail, because the cronies that he could have been with were going to come after him for snitching.
And I believe, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, he was the one who they talked to his ex-wife.
Yes.
Because he had said a 38 caliber gun was used, and that they went the next day, he and his wife at the time, and they collected the shell casings, and they took them home and they flushed them down the toilet. Well, so once he said that, they talked to his ex-wife, and she said, yes, that is what happened. They went into the septic system. This is 8 years after. So they dug through 8 years of poo and found these 38 shell casings. Now, could they have tested them? I don't know. I don't know if they still have the bullets.
Had the technology to even test them.
Do they still exist to test them?
That's what I found within this whole article, was that, is there anything that they even have that can definitively prove something?
I get that, the smaller Speedway or, Johnson County people bumbled it or whatever. But once they brought the FBI in, even just the one guy, you would think that he had a little bit more savvy to know to keep some physical evidence.
Yes.
And hopefully the documentary kind of gives us more insight. When I read about the jail, I'm like, he had to have been involved.
Right.
He absolutely had to have been involved. And I don't know how things worked back then. I watch enough true crime, and I watch enough. There are prosecutors out there that will try anything, and there's not plenty. There are innocent people in jail because they're wrongly accused, and I don't know if it was fear that we have no evidence. I don't know why they would not have just tried.
Maybe. I'm theorizing. I don't know anything past what we've said as far as what we've heard. But, sometimes it's somebody connected.
Yeah, I know.
It's as simple as that. Because it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And that was a different time, too.
It was a different time, but there's still too many missing pieces.
I know.
Well, I just can't imagine, and I'm sure this documentary, I know that they spoke to a lot of the family members of these kids that were killed. I just can't imagine how devastated they were that everything was so botched that they're really never going to find out exactly who killed their kid.
Unless someone comes forward and just admits it. Like, hopefully the guilt is eating at someone and it's a deathbed confession. I freak out thinking that this is all area that we travel in. We are in these places. They lived in Franklin, Indiana at the time. I think all places we go.
Yeah.
That these other people involved are passing us on the street.
No. Yeah.
It's just
it's heartbreaking.
Very unsettling.
It's heartbreaking for the families too. And I think that, what is it, 45 years? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That I find it crazy that in 45 years, because I know that other departments have taken it on, and as police detectives retired, it's kind of always been looked at and kind of always been shuffled through. I find it hard to believe that somebody that knew something at this time could not have come that hasn't come forward, because the people that did it could be dead by now.
Right.
I mean,
They probably
if they were in their 20s though, they're not, I don't know.
Right.
Somebody knows something, obviously. I mean, so
where does that leave us, Tracy? Do we have any other suspects? The only other suspect thing that I saw online was that there, at the time that the kids went missing, there was some sort of jailbreak with some people in Cincinnati, and these prisoners were on the run, and they didn't know where they were, and it was possible within the time frame that if they did steal a car, they could have made it to the west side of. But then again, that would mean that they were desperate for money and all that kind of stuff, and the fact that nothing was taken, that doesn't make any sense.
No, I think that's kind of they're really reaching.
Yeah. And the multiple ways of murder, multiple people, like there's just too many moving parts and too much missing information.
Do you find it odd? And I know that it's not far away from each other. I think back when I was little, I would have thought that it was from Speedway to Johnson County. Okay, that's a little bit of a drive to transport the bodies, or if they took them when they were alive or whatever. I find it curious. Like, was one of the murderers from Johnson County, from that area?
Yeah, they would have to be. It
because
was so desolate,
why would they
and
know?
It was dark. It was after midnight when they dumped the bodies there, and they shot them there. So it would have to be after midnight, and it would have been. I mean,
you would have to know the area.
Yeah, back in that time, there weren't street lights. You know what I mean?
No.
Like in that area. So it would have just been so dark that if you didn't know where you were going.
Rob likes to call that country dark.
And it is country dark.
It still is pretty country dark, like in Bargersville.
Yeah.
Question: I didn't read anything about it. Hurt the manager's car. What at that time did they sweep it for fingerprints? Did they do anything?
I never saw anything.
Me neither.
The only thing that I saw was that they found one of the girls' shoes.
Okay.
And that should be a very horrible thing to find with an abandoned car.
Yeah.
Somebody's single shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the driver's side door was locked. And I don't know what that has to do other than her mom had said she was most likely forced to crawl out the other side and go out.
Well, that was before automatic locks in cars.
Yeah.
And they probably locked them, and you couldn't.
So just bizarre little details like that, but not that you can go, oh, well, that makes sense because of XYZ. Like, I just am shocked at the number of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And I didn't totally review the Speedway murders preview. Did they claim that they were going to be definitive and like talk with someone that knows?
Oh, you mean the documentary?
The documentary.
The trailer.
I don't know. Did you
I
see
watched it. What I find interesting, and this kind of drives me crazy because I watch a lot of ID on investigative discovery. I like true crime where they're like talking to the cops and they're talking to the prosecutors and even like maybe victims' families and stuff. They're going to have actors portray this, so they're kind of making this more movie-esque. And then, and that kind of bothers me, but I did see at the very end of the trailer that they are speaking to someone that they're kind of just leading it as like, a cliffhanger.
Okay.
Like I can tell you who killed. So,
I just got a chill.
I know. So I think that they wouldn't be releasing something like this if they didn't feel like this could maybe open up some eyes. I mean, why would they? I mean, I don't know.
Well, be warned, because Lillian got totally taken by one of those ID. They're going to tell you who did. It was with D.B. Cooper.
Okay.
Remember the guy that jumped out of the back of the airplane? They never found him.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all they did was promo this true crime thing saying, oh, we know where he is. We know where D.B. Cooper is. And so we watched this 2-hour documentary. And at the end, the investigator went up to some fenced off like yard in a neighborhood, and some man was walking in his yard, and he's like, excuse me, sir, are you D.B. Cooper?
Dear Lord.
He said no. And then It ended, and we all looked at each other like, "Did we just watch this for 2 hours?"
There are some
For
crazy.
nothing.
There are some really, really bad shows on
Yes.
there, but there's some really good ones
So
too.
I'm hoping that this has a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah.
Although, why would they get the exclusive and have it come out like that? That seems crazy. So I doubt they're going to know too much. But
Yeah, but somebody and there was, I forget the year, there was a one of those crime shows did a story on the Burger King murders. I think it might have been
Burger Chef.
sorry,
Burger
King.
Sorry, King.
And I think it was a few years ago, but I don't think it was near. I think it was just basically let's tell the story and let's, tell the theories and the speculation and things like that. So
Okay,
it's
well-
really
I did
is
not know
interesting.
when we started researching this a few weeks ago. I did not know about the documentary.
Really?
I thought, what the heck? Why are we doing this with that?
That's what kind
And
of
then-
made me think about it because I saw it on my feed.
Okay. Well, then I saw that, and I don't know if it's happened yet, but the building is being torn down.
It was torn down in March.
It was.
So it
because I saw
was-
that it was going to be, but I didn't see that
It
it
was.
definitively was torn down.
It became an auto parts store at one point, and then it was a pawn store. And honestly, they tore it down because I think the families had been asking and asking and asking, please just do something with this. And they, just it was an eyesore, first of all. But can you imagine?
No.
I mean, it's, that it was there. I was only 5 at the time, but it's one of those things that I have tucked back in my memory because I'm just an anxious person anyways. And when things happen like that, like you said, that are triggering, I remember that being talked about years after and always wondering and like, how could something like that happen? And it make you feel when you're little that you kind of feel like that you had your head on a swivel.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
something bad could happen to like kids working at, I did work in fast food industry for a little while.
Well, yeah.
And I worked at the King. 3 weeks. I only
no
worked there
wonder.
3 weeks
I was
of
gonna
my
say.
100 jobs, but yeah.
Well, and I thought about that too. I'm like, really? Not to make light of it, but I'm like, working at Hardee's,
I know.
wearing that stupid uniform.
Polyester.
All of it was humiliating and bad. And then to be there and get killed.
I know.
What?
Just innocent
Made me
teenagers that, yeah.
sick. Okay, Tracy, you got any more?
That's all I got.
Okay,
I
well-
know nothing else.
Well, I hope that everyone feels like they're a little bit more up to speed on this unsolved or maybe unsolved mystery.
we do have a really big Indiana audience, so someone
so we'll talk
who's
about it after
listening
the documentary's
may
out.
know someone or something.
Oh my gosh! Now we're going to crack the case.
What if we did? You don't know we're not going to.
Yeah, but we'll talk about it.
Pretty sure.
We might.
Okay, what if me saying, look at Grandpa's shed for
Oh my God!
for a handle to a knife?
You're terrible.
I'm
now
being
Grandpa has
serious.
to go to jail. Thank you so much for listening to our take on this true crime unsolved story. Be watching for different streaming. What do you say? Apple something?
Apple and Prime and
Apple and Prime.
select theaters.
It's called the Speedway Murders, and I think you can look for it on June 21st, so a little bit later this month. So thank you for joining us on Up for Grabs, and we hope to see you back next time. Thanks.